The Leave Your Legacy podcast is supported by Wise Financial. Wise Financial is a Northwestern Mutual private client group member. For over 20 years, Wise Financial has dedicated its efforts to designing comprehensive wealth management strategies for business owners and many accomplished athletes. Through their efforts, Wise Financial has been recognized as an industry-leading firm. The Northwestern Mutual Life Insurance Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Hello and welcome to the Leave Your Legacy Show. I'm your host, Kenyon Murray, and today we have a very special, not only episode, but series. One of the things that everyone knows is I've been happily married, maybe not happily married. We've been married almost 25 years now. But like a lot of couples, we went through a lot of ups and downs and we almost got divorced. And so we started this YouTube page called Marriage WTF, and we want to kind of bring that back just because there's so many people that we know that have been affected by it, but also who have been, they gained a lot from it. It opened up the door for them to talk. And in some instances, some of our friends have told us like it helped save their marriage. And so we want to do kind of a special series to kind of revisit those times, how we got through them and how we ended up on this end of the positive marriage spectrum, still being together. And so I want to introduce my lovely wife of 24, almost 25 years, Michelle Murray. Michelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You're going to be short and sweet, huh?
Yeah,
short and
that's
sweet.
how I roll.
Well, we really want to get started off with this. Why did we do Marriage WTF? It was one of those things where you and I was very oblivious to what was going on. I was kind of in my own world, very ego-driven, and not really being the best man. So I guess we can go back to the text that started it all.
It's hard to know where to start because there were years and years of things.
Yeah.
But, I think for those that don't know, Marriage WTF, what it stands for, the first probably going back to the beginning.
Yeah.
We knew each other for 8 weeks and we got engaged.
Yeah.
And then 1 year later, we got married. And then on our first anniversary, the twins were 3 weeks old. Yeah. So everything moved kind of fast for us. We were still getting to know each other and we had twins, but we knew enough about each other that we knew that we wanted to be together.
Yeah.
There was no doubt about that.
Yeah.
So I would say probably, maybe the second year of our marriage is when you start chasing the dream of wanting to be the
Division I basketball coach,
men's basketball coach, and I was on board, super supportive. And then when it wasn't happening for you, I think that's when a lot of frustrations kind of came about for you, and I was kind of WTF, and it stood for what you think it stands for.
Yeah.
It took us about 15 years, and it took the text of when I finally said, I think our marriage is over, that we decided it's worth the fight.
Yeah, it was. I think we looked at it from a couple different areas too, having kids, having Demetrius had just moved in with us, and the boys were going into their senior year.
Yeah,
and
it was
everything. Yeah, they were going into
2018, end of 2018, 2019.
Yeah, and then have McKenna at home. So you kind of look at the family dynamic too, and making sure that you want to keep the family intact. But there were just things that I needed to do more than anything to change. And I think one of the things we talked about too is there's a lot of players, and I'm not giving myself any excuse here, but there's a lot of former players that have a hard time readjusting to like real life. And I know for me, it was, my name meant so much to me.
Yeah.
And I really leaned on that. And part of the frustration for me was that, I played at Iowa, I did this and did that, and I'm not getting an opportunity. I was.
And you've seen other guys who have played in their alma maters. They end up coaching there, and that's how their careers get started.
Absolutely. And so I was okay. If I can't do it as a player, I'm gonna do it as a coach. But then when that didn't happen, it caused this. I don't know, search, I guess, for something. Like for me, just trying to figure out who am I, kind of thing. And so I totally became almost introverted with some things. I wasn't very open about things, and I really didn't talk to you about the frustration that was going on. And so, so that text, we can.
Hindsight looking back, it was very ego driven.
Yeah.
All the decisions that you had made, not great decisions.
Right.
And I struggle because there's so much to unpack, but a lot of times I feel like it's your story to tell.
Yeah.
So like, I don't want to rush you into telling anything that you're not ready to.
Oh, I'm good. I'm good.
Well, this is 15 years of me, tiptoeing around it all. So
yeah, no, I'm good. It's still, it saddens me in a way, because looking back on it, I can't believe like I was that guy. And the funny thing is, I wouldn't say funny, but the interesting thing is
Definitely
how the kids noticed it.
Oh man.
And how they noticed a big swing. But it all started because you and I were on our way to a softball game with McKenna. Yep. And we did a Facebook Live. And that's kind of how this whole like, okay, let's do a podcast thing kind of started.
Because I mean, you had gone to see
I'd been to counseling.
Our therapist.
Yeah. I'd been to see Brandon. So it was one of those things where he kind of gave us his approval to do the show. Like it was really, really weird. Like he's like, yeah, I think it's a good idea. And we're kind of like, okay. But that for me was one of those things like, okay, now I got to put it out there. If we're going to put it out there, then I have to be real about it. And I have to dig deep into what I needed to do individually to change. And so, Brandon kind of springboarded everything. Yeah,
he did. Well, I think that like, from my perspective too, everyone looked at us and oh my gosh, you guys got the perfect family and you're so lucky and and everyone puts everything out on Facebook, and I hope I don't get sued, but I always refer to it as fake book, because like that it's not real. Like I know this couple, they're struggling, like they're going to end up divorced, and it just everyone's putting on like such a facade. And so I've never been a huge like social media person, and I just said, like we were having such a great conversation.
Yeah, we were
in that car ride. So I was like, why don't we do like a Facebook Live and just let people know like marriage isn't easy. And what was so hard was, I didn't have a great father, and never really wanted to be in my life. And don't get me started about my mother. That's a whole nother Jerry Springer show.
That's a whole other 5 episodes for both of us.
Yeah. But the most important thing to me was that our kids were my priority, because I was never a priority for my parents.
Yeah.
So I knew that you were going to be an amazing father, and you were. Like you were not a great husband. I'm trying not to swear.
No. Bleep her out.
Yeah, you were not a great husband, but you were such a good father. And so I was in this conundrum of how can I break up our family when the kids need him, and he's so great for the kids.
Yeah, it's.
But I just want to just choke him.
Yeah, no, I get that, but it was, I think. The biggest thing too, like one of the non-negotiables was transparency and honesty. Yes. And we had to sit the kids down and we talked to them about what was going on.
Oh yeah, you did not.
No, I was so uncomfortable.
I know.
I did not want to hit that up.
But I knew that that's what needed to happen. Like we had to be, because kids are sponges. They know what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's come back, and the kids have talked to us about it now because we have that openness. They've talked about them hearing us argue. We weren't yellers, but there would be times where it was very. Well,
we don't live in a very big house though either.
Yeah, very, very intense. But that's the one thing, like I remember you saying is like, we may not stay together.
Yeah.
But, I want you to become the best version of yourself. And I knew that if I worked on me and became a better man, then I would in turn become a better husband, a better father, a better friend, better son. And so it all kind of started with that. It really started with some self-reflection. And Brandon was huge in pulling pulling that out of me as our counselor, really challenging me, which I had a counselor before, a female counselor, which, being totally honest, I suffer from what they call hero complex. And it was always, and I think it came from my relationship with my mom and my sister, and kind of being their go-to, or they leaned on me a lot of times for emotional support and that kind of thing. And it was the three of us, my father wasn't in my life for a long time. And so I knew interacting with females was one of the biggest things that got me, pissed you off and put us in that situation. And I knew that, going to the counselor, it was like I was almost manipulating the female counselor into, I'm good.
Which was so predictable.
Yeah. And you called it.
Female counselors are amazing. If I was going to go to counseling, that's who I would probably prefer, a female counselor. You go to what you're comfortable with, and that's what you were comfortable with at the time. And I knew that because, I think it was Brene Brown, maybe. I don't know. I listen to so many. You cannot grow in your comfort zone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so with you then going to Brandon, I'm like, this is great. I'm still leaving you, but so glad you're getting the help that you need.
Yeah.
But I really didn't. I didn't expect us to stay together. Yeah. I was pretty closed for a while.
Yeah. I didn't know what to do. I mean, because my thing is, in that situation, I didn't know what I would do without you, which I don't know if I ever said that, but that was one of my biggest fears, was like losing you. Obviously I knew I'd still be father to the kids, but that was one of my biggest fears. And part of that was, okay, now I've really got to dive into all the stuff that has been buried for so long. And regardless of what happens, I have to do that in order to free myself of all this other stuff.
Right.
And then come to the realization that we might not be together.
Yeah. So
that was a big fear for me at that time. So, and I say it now, I'm glad you stuck with me, but yeah, it was wild, but we talk about hard things, and that was tough. And so,
you mean like in our YouTube page?
Yeah, in our YouTube channel. Yeah.
Videos.
Yeah. We talked about some really hard things. And so let's take a look at this clip from, I believe, our first full episode of the show, or of our YouTube channel, on some things that I thought were really hard for me to deal with.
So up to this point, 19 years, I have failed miserably at being a husband. I thought I was doing what a husband does, but I really didn't know. I had to figure out who I was in this, because in marriage, there's that old adage where you lose yourself in the marriage, but even going into it, I didn't know who I was. That may sound silly being 45 years old. And for anybody that knows me doing the things that I did, I still don't know, who I am. But I had to go back and figure out how I got to this point. It was obvious that I couldn't unravel the puzzle by myself. Michelle couldn't help me unravel that puzzle as well. So I had to make the decision to go to a counselor and seek a counselor who was going to be able to help me peel back the layers, find out what was at the core of my being, and help me understand it and then evolve from it. So marriage aside, I needed help. I needed counseling for me.
All right. So failure, like I truly felt like a failure from the standpoint of, I failed you big time. I failed the kids. I failed because my mom was one that I talked to her open and honestly about it. She definitely, we know my mom, I'm a mama's boy. Let's just be real. I'm a mama's boy.
She's wonderful. So, I get it. Yeah. I mean, she is fantastic. And when things started hitting the fan, she was actually there. Yeah. She was staying with us that week when you were traveling, and we had a little head-to-head, and she asked me what's wrong, and I unloaded, and she was shocked.
Yeah.
She was stunned. And then after I said everything, she said, I'll never forget this. She said, before you were a wife, before you were a mother, you were a woman first.
Yeah.
And just her saying those things, because I know a lot of the things that she went through to try to, keep her family together, and how strong she is. And I've always really admired her. And so that helped.
Yeah.
That helped.
I mean, and that was honestly disappointing you and disappointing her like that, like crushed me. I mean, because like you said, how I am with my mom and everything. So, but that's the one thing about my mom too. She's always been very open and honest about that. So, so I needed that. And she told me, she's like, basically like, listen, you dug this hole. You got to get your way out. It's not on Michelle to dig you out of this. Right. Like, you've got to deal with some things. And she was like, whatever you need to do that, she goes, and in the end, you guys might not be together. Like, she was the one that like laid it out like, okay, like, I was like, ooh, Mom, like that's, that's a gut punch. Yeah. But I knew she was telling me the truth. And so, and I've told you when I met you, like, you have so many of her qualities. So, I mean, I guess in a way I married my mom, but I'm just saying, I'm just messing with that. But no, they do. You guys have a lot of similar qualities. And, that's one of the things that I love about your relationship, is that you guys have always been able to talk and communicate. And a lot of moms and, mother-in-laws and things like that, it just doesn't work. Yep. But you guys, it has always worked. And she's always been there for us to support us. Not necessarily always help us through it, but she was always there to support us. And so,
which is a good thing, because we were actually engaged before we even met.
Yeah, which was wild. But the comment you made about being a woman first. Yeah. We're going to take a look at a clip from that same episode where I talked about failure, where you talked about all the things you were doing to help the family, to help me kind of live my dream, and just the things that you missed out on, or I think is very important to have me time. And so let's take a look at that clip.
I know a lot of moms can testify to this when I say there was no me time. We just throw so much into doing what our kids need that a lot of times we forget about us.
So me time. So your me time was different as we were on this journey. So you talked a little bit about that. Me time
on the journey, because, as moms know, it is so hard to balance everything. I mean, we had 4 extremely busy children running in opposite directions, and we covered a lot of that, in our episode. So how do you find me time? I mean, how do you do it? So I struggled with that. And then, what I did, I just remember I had to take a couple of days off from work, and I was honest with my supervisor about that. And she was super supportive. One of the first things I did, I go to Google. I'm like, I know there's books out there. There's gotta be videos, it's the 21st century. I need a how-to, I need to work through, very cerebral like that. And so, I'm reading and listening to Brene Brown, Power of Vulnerability, and sharing with you, and, you're going to counseling, I'm going to counseling. I went on a lot of just walks with my headphones in and cried, you were sharing books that you had listened to. What was the author where you talked about every man's got a dog?
Oh, oh my goodness gracious.
Devon.
Yes.
He was married to Megan Good. They recently separated.
Yeah. Either way, but yeah,
yes. So that book, I remember, I audiobooked it, and I'm just like, oh, every man has a dog, and they work to keep that dog down. And I'm like, that makes sense to me. But then I got like really, I'm like, yeah, how come they get a dog? I want a dog. Like, that's not fair.
Right.
Like you label it a dog, and then that's like, okay. And, so, I'm like, okay, there are a lot of men that go through this. And so what we're doing is important. Yeah. So we shared what we were learning with each other. I had a really good friend that she's very faith-based, and we had disconnected from going to church. And, I that is part of it too, is, we get busy with tournaments and our kids. And so there is that disconnection there. So that was another thing that I knew that I wanted to do. I wanted to get back to my connection with God, because I felt like completely separated. I was so lost. I was searching for anything and everything.
Yeah.
So connecting with the new church, with Antioch, that was huge for us.
And then elevation after that.
And elevation, and understanding that, church isn't something that should be a something that you feel like you have to do. It shouldn't feel like an obligation.
Yeah.
We started looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But that was kind of a turning point for me, and we'll get into that a little bit more, but it's the me time thing. Like I do, like, going back to it, I realized, like,
because you had plenty of me time.
I was so, I didn't even know what I was chasing at that point in time. I felt so lost. Like I didn't, we joke about it now when we talked about, I wanted to be a Division I head coach. And, obviously we're in a different chapter of our life right now, but then when I got into dental sales and I became a trainer, it was like God finally connected the dots and said, okay, you are a coach, but it was just in a different world. Like we're taking your talent and your abilities from a world you think you have to be in to a world where you can thrive in too, as a trainer or a manager and things like that. And it's kind of crazy because I was actually really, really enjoying, that part and being in that position as a manager and trainer. And then obviously things changed with our kids, with Chris and Keegan.
That allowed you to continue to coach and train the boys as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I know because of that, because you talked about me being a good dad, I felt like I needed to be there through that process. And so I got fired from a job.
Yeah.
I probably messed up or didn't seek out promotions that were there.
No, not probably.
Okay, I did.
Thank you.
I did not. But it was one of those things.
Definitely didn't work up to your potential.
I look at it now.
Frustrating.
Yeah, I do. I think I still have a lot of potential. But yeah, it was a realization, but that wouldn't have come if all these other things hadn't happened, which it sucks for you to go through 18 years of me to find it. But it was our rededication to our faith that really opened things up and really gave me perspective and allowed me to function at a level that I hadn't before because of my belief and because of our, dedication to going to church and doing that and Bible study and things like that. Like, our faith is been a real turning point, especially probably more for me than you when it comes to that. But yeah, we enjoy it, and we understand how important that was. But
I think too, like just when you found Brandon, I mean, it was a Google search, and this guy's available, and sometimes the universe just conspires. And when I mean, for us, as we've been on our faith journey, the universe, source energy, God, to us, it's all the same thing that's guiding you. And the fact that Brandon is who you went to see, and I'm just like, you go get it. I'm still leaving.
Yeah.
But he ended up being faith-based.
Yeah.
And that was huge.
Yeah.
I mean, are we to the point where we talk about, like DDay? Are we there yet?
We can definitely talk that. We'll come back to how you and I have changed since that point. But yeah, we can talk about DDay. Well, first, we've talked about like female versus male counselor. For me, obviously having Brandon was great because he challenged me, and it was almost like being like a coach. He was my coach, and I'm in a huddle, and he's saying, "Listen, Okay. And he just, I need you to do this. You're not living up to your potential, or you're not doing this. Like and so it was a really good back and forth where he challenged me. And I think I came home every time when it was just he and I with something new to share. And then
well, first you took a nap because you were exhausted. And then we would, and I always told you, you don't have to tell me what you talked about with him. Yeah. Like this is between, you guys. Like because I'm still leaving. So this is just about you finding yourself.
Yeah. So let's talk about DDay.
Okay.
From your perspective, because the one thing that did happen when you started coming to counseling with me was that our first session with him? It was not our first session. I think it might have been our third session, because you had been there before. Because remember, you said, I don't know why I'm going. I don't need counseling. But then when we got in there.
No, I'm like, I do. I remember I'm like, I'm good. I've dealt with my with my dysfunction, and I always have. I've always been very honest, open and honest about it. And, how it's formed me to be who I am today, but I'm like, I'll totally go and support you.
But there were some things that came out of it for you, though.
Because even though you feel like you've dealt with, things in your childhood that, maybe, dysfunction in your family or, whatever it is, it's always there.
Yeah.
And you don't just like deal with it one time and then like, oh, I'm all better. I mean, it's always there. So it's important to have tools to know how to, because you always have to have tools for triggers.
Yeah.
Because even we still have.
Yeah, scars are scars.
Exactly.
Scars are scars, and there's always triggers.
Said.
So we have to deal with it, but yeah.
So
DDay, go ahead. I'm gonna let you take it from your perspective. So.
Well, for me, that Friday before, and this was in March, I was just, I felt completely lost. It's one of the days where I took a day off from work. I had a couple of friends that, one who had been through a really rough marriage and divorce and came through. She was a rock for me. And another one was a good friend of mine who we've been best friends since the day we met in college. Mm-hmm. And she was just studying her faith journey. And I'm just like, I want to know more about what she's learned. So I went out and spent the day with her and we talked and I'm like, I pray every day and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And I still have like so much anxiety and, and she just said, sometimes you just need to just stop and listen. She's like, we know that we pray and God hears our prayers, but sometimes you just have to just stop and just listen. And I was like, oh yeah, okay. And this is hard because I'm kind of a control freak. So I'm like, okay, just stop and listen. And then the next morning, I woke up at 4:30 a.m. and my mind was just racing. It was one thing after another, like the kids and we're gonna have to sell the house and I'm still planning this divorce, even though you've been in therapy for, a couple months.
Yeah.
My mind's just racing. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to get up. I'm going to do my yoga and then I'm going to do my meditation, and then I'm going to end in prayer. And so I'm going through my yoga and it's just not, I can't like focus on it. I'm just like, and then I start bawling hysterically. And so all of a sudden I just felt this whoosh kind of come over me and I just felt, be still. And I'm like, my first thought was, oh, great. Now I'm hearing voices, so you can add psychosis to it. But then I'm just like, no, that was more of a feeling than just like than a voice, and this calmness came over me. And then I just kind of sat in it for a little bit and I wasn't bawling. I might've still been hyperventilating a little bit, but it was calming. So I was like, okay, this is good. And then we went to church and I remember sorry, those are earlier churches.
You're Catholic.
I remember the pastor talking about, sometimes when it comes down to it, just be still and know. And I was like, whoa, be still.
I remember writing that down because you had told me about that.
Yeah.
I wrote it down in my notes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, well, be still. Okay. All right. And then my good friend from Friday, she had sent me this podcast clip to listen to. And in the podcast clip, the girl who was, going over a Bible verse, she said, be still. And I think she was actually referencing Exodus at the time. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, that's the third time this weekend I heard that.
Yeah.
Like what? So I Googled it. What is this be still? And it's be still and know I am God. Psalms 46:10. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, that's cool. So then Monday is when we went. Yeah. That's our D-Day.
Yeah.
We're meeting with Brandon, and he says to you.
Yeah, he asked me, like, basically, like, what do you want out of your life? Like, what are you chasing? And it was.
And who are you?
Yeah, and I remember to this day, like, I sat there and I closed my eyes, and what I saw was nothing. It was black. And so to me, that was a message telling me, like, if you don't change your ways, like, that's where you're heading. You're heading into an abyss for the I guess for lack of a better terms. And we know what that abyss is when you talk about your spiritual and your faith mm-hmm. journey and things like that. And so I didn't see anything, and it scared me to death. And I knew that, like, I had to change, and it started with my faith. Like, I just had to dive into it, and so
and confront things that have been that you didn't realize were holding you back.
Right. And there are things that I've dealt with, but they're still there. Mm-hmm. But I know how to. But like you said, you have tools to get through it.
Yeah.
And so, that day was so emotionally draining. I went home. We went home.
I don't even remember all of it. I just remember how we both felt. And I remember Brandon at the end of our hour saying, "Are you guys okay?"
Yeah.
And I'm like,
that was God kind of wrapping it all together. It was, the message that you sent, the message that he sent to me. And it was like, okay, we knew that our faith journey at that point in time was probably, it was probably going in a little bit different direction as far as like what you needed versus what I needed.
Right.
And we're like, if it all comes back, it comes back. But if it doesn't, we know that we're doing things personally that are going to help us be better versions of ourselves moving forward. And so, that was a crazy day. I took a nap. And
so, you went home. Yeah. So Brandon's like, you guys okay? Kenyon says, or I said, well, we'll be okay. I'm like, he's going to go home and take a nap, and I'm going to get a tattoo. So I went and I went down to Wild Side in Cedar Rapids, and a gentleman by the name of Sticky, I told him my story, and he did the be still on my forearm. So.
Yeah. And then me, I didn't go to Sticky, but I did the same thing because one of my favorite verses is Exodus 14. And, that's the same thing. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Mm-hmm. And so you talk about Bible verses that capture you. Yeah. But then the connection that you and I have, like we talked in the beginning, like we always knew. Right. Like, it was just crazy how we knew that we would be together. It was just that I made the journey a little bit tougher than it needed to be. And so, but that was D-Day. And from that point forward, you and I were like, we were locked in. And there's just been so many different, locked in with our faith.
Okay, yes.
Locked in with our faith. We still had to work on a relationship. But D-Day was pretty crazy, but it was monumental, and it was life-changing. Yeah. For both of us. Yep. You touched on it a little bit, the whole faith journey. Like, you grew up Catholic. Yep. So
went to Catholic school, went to Catholic college.
And I got baptized Catholic when we had the boys. Actually, it was after we had McKenna. Yeah. But we moved away from that. And, I want to talk a little bit about that journey and how it's led us here. It's not that we just needed something different. Yeah. We needed something different. We really don't have to get into beliefs in Catholicism, all that kind of stuff. But we needed
I will.
We just needed something different, because I remember you saying to me about the Catholic, when I got baptized Catholic, I would come home from the classes I had to take, and I would say, hey, do you know that we read this prayer for that, we read that prayer for that? And you're like, I didn't know that. Like, I just went and did it. So that's that's
out of
kind of
obligation.
Yeah. So
'Cause that's just what you do. You go to church.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about that shift for you when it came to, just the faith and how you looked at it, your relationship, your personal relationship with God.
I just knew that there was more that I wanted to learn.
Yeah.
I knew that I just had so many questions. And when it comes down to like a specific, I guess, religion, I wanted to take religion out of the equation, because there are times where I would sit in church and, I'm listening to the message and I'm like, oh, I get that. But then something comes up about something political and I'm like, that's not, like what I'm here for.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to find something new. And so, people have talked about non-denominational churches and I was like, well, that's not really church,
Yeah, right.
But, it's not about the denomination. So the churches that we have attended and listened to, they're inclusive of all denominations. So I love the inclusivity of the places that we go and the places that we attend.
Yeah.
Because I had a hard time with, like, well, if you haven't had First Communion, you can't have it, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of amazing people out there that aren't maybe necessarily, baptized a specific religion that,
Right. Yeah.
they're still have a closeness with God.
Absolutely. And I think I go back to my Bible study group.
Yeah.
So we started attending Antioch. I actually became a prayer team member when my schedule wasn't so crazy. And then this Bible study group, we started meeting at Scooters at 6:15 a.m. on Fridays. And I was like the youngest guy there. And I was the only black guy in the whole group. And so what was great about it was, there were guys in the group that went to Antioch. There are also guys that continue to go to Catholic church or Lutheran church. But when we got together and we studied the word, like it was very powerful to have a group of, say, 8 to 12 men talking about these things, interpreting the Bible, and just getting different perspectives. Because for me, I was a new perspective for them in the group. They were a new perspective for me in the group. And
they've had years of marriages.
Yeah, plenty. I mean, I think our two senior members have been married both over 50 some years. And so having that perspective has been phenomenal. But I tell this group all the time, like, you didn't not only save me, you saved my marriage. And it's and
I think I've only met one of them.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like once or twice.
Yeah,
we randomly would run into them at church.
It's so wild, but that's the one thing that I felt I've really opened up to, is just being able to share, be transparent and vulnerable with other men. I just recently came back from a retreat, and that's what it was about. And I think that's the one thing that we don't address as much as we should, not only in the African-American community, but just males in general. Like, do you have someone that can hold you accountable, that, that you won't have, be mad at or whatever? Do you have someone that can speak truth into your life? Do you have someone that can give you perspective? And if you do have those people, are you in a place where you can accept that, receive it? And that's the biggest thing, because I wasn't in a place where I could receive things.
Right.
And this happened, and it has been transformational in my thought process. It's transformational in my demeanor, my perspective, and looking forward and always trying to find the best in people, in things, in situations. Looking
through the eyes of more, what can I do for someone else instead of, what can I do for me?
Right.
Because your life was, from my perspective, very ego-driven.
Absolutely.
At the time. And when your life is ego-driven, I think it was Eckhart Tolle. I love listening to his books. On audio, Personal Perceptions, or A New Earth is Life's Purpose. That's the one where he talks about ego, and just, you can't get in touch with yourself and you can't get in touch with God if everything is ego-driven.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that was huge for me. And I think I tried to get you to read it, but.
I had a lot of other books I read too. That's helped, but the Bible being the most important one.
For sure. Remember the one book we started reading? Love and Respect.
Yeah, Love and Respect. Yeah.
Oh, that was huge.
That was big.
That's actually, we were like, whoa, that's actually in the Bible too.
Yeah.
Like, what is it? Man, you will love your wife, and wife will in turn respect her husband.
Yeah.
Oh man, we were in such a vicious cycle of dysfunctional where like, like you weren't showing me love. So I have like zero respect for you. And because I wasn't respecting you, you weren't showing me any love. And
it was wild.
Yeah. I remember like we were reading that together and we were just like, oh.
Yeah. And it's wild though. I think when you look at like the husband, wife or male, female dynamic.
Yeah.
And how we're socialized too.
Mm-hmm.
That plays a big part in it because, I was always like we talked about yesterday, like, you don't appreciate me. Like, you don't tell me, and like but I didn't realize it wasn't a man thing. It was a Kenyon thing that, for other parts, for most of my life, I hadn't felt that from the people that I needed to feel that from.
Right.
We won't get into like the whole family dynamic.
So many cans and so many worms.
I know, it's like, yeah. So we don't want to open that one up right now. But it was a vicious cycle, and what we had to learn, and I had to learn more than anything was what you needed, because the way we show love, the way we show respect, the way you need to receive it is different than the way I need to receive it, and understanding that is what has allowed us to have transparent and meaningful conversations without now at this point, like getting upset about things. Cause I would always avoid any tough conversation because I'm like, I don't want to deal with it.
Yeah. You were a runner.
Cause I was, I had my running shoes on cause I was used to doing that. And I did that growing up because there were certain things that I felt that I needed that I wasn't getting. And it's, it has nothing to do, it does have to do with family dynamics and what went on there, because you know how close I am to my sister, and then how she got sent away. It created this. I created this bubble around me that I wouldn't.
And we do because it's self-preservation, and it served to protect you at that time.
Yep.
But things that served to protect us at that time. And I can't take credit for this. This is another one of the, whether it's Brene Brown or Mel Robbins, but things that protected us at that time don't always serve us later in life.
Absolutely. They can hinder
holds
us.
You back.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So one of the things that Brene Brown talked about was embrace the suck.
Yeah.
And this sucked. And it sucked rewatching. That was the first time, last night as we knew we were going to do this morning.
Yeah.
I was sitting and I'm like, all right, I really didn't want to. I'm like, I don't want to go. I don't want to relive this. Like it was so painful doing the videos, but at the time, we knew it was necessary.
Yeah.
So I don't regret doing it, and I don't regret putting it all out there, because we have helped people. Yeah.
And I mean, couples suffer in silence, and we've seen it way too much. Now with McKenna being a senior, we see families that are kind of breaking up, just like we did with Chris and Keegan. And I'll say this about Chris and Keegan and where they are now. I mean, obviously those who don't know, we have twin boys that are, both NBA players at this point in time. I don't think if I hadn't gone through what I went through, I don't know if they would be where they are. Because part of their journey was me allowing other people to coach them, me allowing other coaches to pour into them, and understanding I wasn't the end all be all to what it is. And now I love the fact that I can step back and just be dad. And
that was a really hard transition though. And because when we made the decision for them to go to DME in Florida, that was the same time when you and I weren't sure our marriage was going to work. Yeah. We weren't sure I still wasn't sure that we were going to be together, but they had an opportunity. We knew all they needed was just time for their bodies to physically develop. emotional development, development in their game, just all the way around. And we knew after you took the boys down there for a visit that that's exactly where they needed to be, even though it was in Florida. And they could care less about the beach and the ocean. And they didn't want to go. And we forced them. We were like, you're going. And I was blessed that I had a position with the University of Iowa that I could work remotely. And so I was able to go with them. That saved us money. Being able to stay down there with them. I felt like my relationship grew with them, being able to spend time with them. And, and then you were back up here with McKenna. But there was a lot of conversations, a lot of tears on the phone with, you missing them so much and me missing McKenna so much. And that was tough. But, I believe
it made our family tighter, though.
It really did.
It really pulled us together. And remember, the funny thing is the kids thought we had separated because you were with them in Florida and I was in Iowa. They were like, Mom and Dad are getting divorced.
Yeah, they thought that was it.
They were having those conversations, which is kind of crazy. But
we weren't sure.
Yeah.
But they thought that was the first part of our separation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even though we told them like it wasn't. Like,
but I still think they were preparing themselves for the worst.
I think so too.
Because
they'd seen it happening. Not just with our family. I mean, to be honest, like they probably knew, like as soon as I graduate, I'm outie. Because that was my thought for many years.
But no, that was, but that, I go back to that a lot because I was so like hands-on. And I think me being hands-on early in their life definitely helped them.
For sure.
Being there, because that was one of the reasons we started the AU program. But understanding that, I was one thing in their life and I needed to allow other people to pour into them for them to realize their dreams. That was the hardest thing in the world. But I really love it now. Is that I can just be dad. And we really don't talk basketball so much. I'll throw something in there, but they always are quick to tell me that they have coaches. Just like McKenna. So
McKenna's been doing that since she was in fourth grade, though.
Yeah, Dad, I have a coach here.
You're not my coach, Dad.
You don't need to yell at me. But from an ego standpoint, I look back on that time and that decision and that realization as something that probably catapulted them to be able to achieve the success they've had here. And so I know in becoming a better man, like it's allowed me to become a better husband and a better father. And, those are the things that I cherish. I even just, I apologize for putting you through that. Putting the kids through it, and it's one of those things like I say to God, like, okay, like do we really have to go through this?
You say that.
I've
asked that question to God many a time.
But I know sometimes, God uses broken to spread his word, to spread his love. And I was definitely broken at that time. So with that being said, is there anything else we want to add to this? Because we have like 3 more shows to do when it comes to this, and we're really going to dive into how to rebuild trust, and when things like when saying sorry isn't enough, because heavens knows I said sorry a lot of times. But before we end this show, is there anything else you want to add as far as kind of put a bow on what we did at the beginning of our marriage being reborn, that you think our audience would gain something from?
I think that, we've talked about that, rebuild our marriage. And for you and I'm like, I don't want to rebuild it. Like we need to tear it down and start over. Because, I felt at the time like our foundation was pretty solid. But we did not use very sturdy material. I guess, so we had to just tear everything down and, start with a solid foundation and understand what that meant. And so that was the biggest part of the journey. And that was probably the most pivotal part of our journey so I don't feel like we are like rebuilding. We have built brand new, because I don't Oh, well, we have a 4.
Yeah, it's like putting on a new deck on a house. You got to tear everything down.
Yes, you do.
New support beams and everything.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Well, this is just the first one. This is just the first episode in this Marriage WTF series that we're excited to bring to you. I want to say thank you to Storyline Multimedia, Wise Financial, and really, really want to thank Bravehearts TV for allowing us this platform to share our story, to bring people on that have inspiring things to share to not only our audience here on Bravehearts, but all across the world. And so with that being said, I'm Kenyon Murray, your host. Let's keep connecting. This podcast is sponsored by Storyline Multimedia. Storyline is an Iowa City-based media company that specializes in creating high-quality video, photo, and audio productions for local businesses. Not only that, but they also produce a number of podcasts, including this one. So if you're interested in sharing the story of your business with the world, contact them today by visiting StorylineMultimedia.com. And remember, your story matters.